This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Marqeta. When it comes to your payments provider, you can't afford to compromise. Marqeta's modern payment solutions flex with your business without the trade-offs. Stable and agile, secure and innovative, scalable and configurable. If they say you can't have it all, don't believe them. Your business demands more. Choose a payments provider that delivers more. Choose Marqeta. Visit marqeta.com/Spotify to learn more.
Welcome to episode 64 of the High Volume Hiring Podcast. My name is Stephen Rothberg. I am the founder of College Recruiter Job Search Site, where we believe that every student and recent graduate deserves a great career. I have been really looking forward to this episode, but I'm not going to steal the thunder.
Hi, everyone. I am co-host Jeanette Leeds, and you may notice that it doesn't say AMS any longer because I recently have graduated from AMS. So I'll just tell you a quick story, and then we'll turn it over to our exciting podcast topic of the day. But as many of you guys know, it's graduation season right now. And so where I'm going is like, I've graduated, and so is, I think many people knew I was running the Hourly by AMS conversational AI tech product and business for the past 2.5 years. And it's interesting because over the tenure while I was there, we grew revenue by 20x and let's say reduced costs by 6x, and NPS score was like at 80 plus. And I think we won around 7 awards. And so all of that, when I first joined, it was like, hey, can we stabilize and grow the business, which we did. And Hourly at the time was being run as a standalone company. It's totally separate from AMS, which I don't think a lot of people realized.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was. It was like a company within a company. And quickly realized like, hey, this is not the best business model for AMS and ultimately for the customers and clients. So actually ended up integrating Hourly fully into AMS once we got it all stabilized. And so in many ways, Hourly fully graduated into AMS. I'm going with the graduation theme. Also means like I graduated. So I did such a good job that it was like, oh, everyone's graduated. So that's what I did. So I have left AMS. And I think those who are connected with me on LinkedIn may have seen sort of recently that I am now certified officially in Gen AI and as a trainer. So we'll see where I end up next, which will be exciting. But in the meantime, it's such a perfect segue into today's guest. We have Hilke, who is, as it says at the bottom, an Emmy award-winning investigative journalist and a journalism professor at NYU. And the topic for today is, are AI-powered hiring systems legally compliant and morally justified? So I think all of us have been anxiously awaiting today's topic. So Hilke, welcome. We're so
thank you for having me. And congratulations.
Thank you. Exciting time of the year.
I'm feeling very intimidated.
It is graduation season.
It is. So Hilke, why don't we kick off just, tell us a little bit about, I know you have a book that's out, which it's perfect. Everyone can QR code and scan it. Just a little bit about the book and, why you decided to write it.
Yeah, the book is about the world of AI and hiring and employee monitoring, and also now that we see AI being used for firing and termination decisions. So I got into it 6 years ago or so, I was taking a Lyft ride, and I talked to the driver, and he told me he had a weird day because he got interviewed by a robot, and I had never heard of that. That was in 2017. It was, probably a pre-recorded voice asking those questions, but that set me on this path, and I, saw HireVue and other vendors showcasing their technology at a conference, and I was just blown away. And I was like, wow, maybe we have superseded humans, and this is like a great way of hiring. And I wanted to know more, and then I started looking into it, and maybe found some stuff that isn't as good as we initially thought.
Well, I read the book. I think I wouldn't say like cover to cover in one sitting, but it was cover to cover in probably 4 sittings over about 2 days. It was awesome. It read like a novel. It was, I've recommended to a ton of people. Really, really awesome. A lot of things really resonated for me, Hilke, in the algorithm. And one of them was that over and over again, you really clearly say that you're a fan of technology, you're a fan of AI, but some of these things concern you, right? That's like,
I mean, I think, I do think, yeah.
Yeah, you can really love something and yet also be concerned about it at the same time.
Yes, totally. I think AI is a transformative technology. Like, even the pre-generative AI, right? That even the predictive AI that we have seen in the last 5-6 years, like really come to fruition in hiring. It's a wonderful, awesome technology. I think it's just what I found out is like we have to like keep supervising it and checking it. And I think that's when we humans let it make all the decisions and we don't look very closely. That's when I found out that they're like, that biased keywords come into resume screening. I talked to employment lawyers and psychologists who get to peek into these systems. And they found things like, the name Thomas was a predictor of success, locations like Syria and Canada, which is, could be discrimination based on national origin. In one system, the word African, African-American was used. In another, folks who had the word baseball on their resume got more points, and people who had the word softball on their resume get fewer points, which, could be gender discrimination because traditionally more women in the United States play softball. So, kind of stuff that we really shouldn't be using to make hiring decision. And I think that is what worries me, that, and this wasn't found by the vendor who built the tools, right? This was like when there was like due diligence and maybe when companies sort of were using a tool for a while and were like, is this really working? They bring in outside counsel and then they find these problematic keywords, with other technology, other problematic use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen this for years where it's really, you have to dig in and understand, is there any adverse impact, right? Like, is there, and I've seen organizations over the years start to look at, okay, if we think of like the EEOC rules, if we want to make this super simple, it's like, okay, what percentage of the applicants, if it's percentage of male versus female or preferred, then like it has to be the same going throughout. Because otherwise, so you got to like really dig in and look at this and make sure that there's I'll never say you can't reduce, you can't remove bias, rather. I think you can reduce it and ensure there's no adverse impact. Like that's the key. But if an organization isn't really.
Hey, it's Libby DeLucian. If you're sick of business advice that sounds cute, but doesn't actually move the needle forward, this one's for you. The Libby DeLucian podcast is where we go one layer deep. No gurus, no glitter, just straight up unfiltered talk about scaling a business, running a household, and holding on to your sanity in the middle of the chaos. If you're the bottleneck in your business or in your own life, I'll show you how to fix it. Simple, tactical, and one layer deep every time. Let's go. Visit libbyd.com and check out our podcast today.
Thinking and focusing on that, it's so easy.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think also what I would suggest people do is like not only looking at the EOC 4/5 rule, which I think we sort of generally see being used most of the time, is where you have like men versus women and the different races sort of comparing each other. Do they go through the tool at somewhat similar ratios, right? But I think what we've also seen is like where a lot of discrimination and bias happens in algorithm is on the intersection of like Black women versus white men, and not a lot of companies look at that.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that's something I would urge everyone to really look closely, because that's where a lot of these tools fall apart. Like often we see they work generally for women, but when it comes to Black women,
Right. It's like
or other minorities, exactly, double marginalized. So if we use, bias data, which most companies have, right? Like most companies don't have hiring that sort of reflects the diversity that we live in. So if you use your current folks as the training data, you're probably going to replicate a lot of that. So if you don't look closely, if you don't do all the testing, and then I would also suggest to really look at the validity of these tools. Are they actually trying to find something that is predictive of job performance? Or are they looking, I found tools that use facial expressions, intonation of our voices to score people. And there is no facial expression science, what facial expressions we need to have in a job interview that would infer how successful we'll be at the job, right? It's sort of the same with intonation of our voices. So you really need to think through what are like the skills, the capabilities that I'm hiring for, and are these criteria being met in these tools, or am I just looking at everything a candidate puts on their resume, which arguably I don't think we really should be looking at hobbies to understand if somebody has the skills and capabilities for a job. In fact, bias can creep in through those kinds of proxies.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Just how you did so like one of the laugh out loud moments that I had when reading the book was you were talking about like sort of the pseudoscience from 100 years ago. There used to be this museum in downtown Minneapolis, and I think it was called something like the Science of the Weird or something like that. And it had one of these like cap kinds of contraptions with a bunch of like almost like pins where they measured the size and shape of your head. And based upon that was supposed to tell them like how intelligent you were. I won't even start on how ridiculous that is. But what I hear, and I have conversations multiple times a week with some of the same vendors that you talked about in the book and a whole bunch of others that you probably looked into. And it's just like, I can make this 4,000 pages, but yeah, that's not going to happen. And over, Nate, what I hear from a lot of HR tech vendors is it makes sense that this is what should happen. If we put candidates into this system, it only makes sense that the output on the other end are going to be the best qualified candidates. And what you make the point of, and maybe you can comment to this, is just because it logically makes sense does not mean it actually happens.
Yeah,
and you actually have to
there's
test for that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple things at play here. Is like, it's like, I think in HR and in hiring, we always want to look under the hood of the candidate, right? They present themselves, they have this curated persona in their resume, and they have this wonderful story that they tell in the job interview, but we always feel like, who are you really, right? Like I want to look under the hood. So I think people wanted to do that for a very, very long time. So we've seen like, handwriting analysis, and the same idea with maybe facial expression is like, well, it looks very individual, right? Like we all have different handwriting. So something about you must be in that handwriting, and I can bring somebody in who can analyze it. Well, it turns out that is pseudoscience. We've never actually had any evidence that we can find our personality in our handwriting. The same with like our emotions in our facial expressions. Yes, we often have similar emotions. Like a lot of us, when we are smiling, we are happy, but a lot of us are not. In fact, I've been in so many job interviews where I've smiled and I was not happy. So you can't infer that, and I've known people who, like somebody I know, like, she used to, when she got angry, she started crying. People thought she was sad. She wasn't, right? Everyone has these misfires. So we really can't judge that. And also, like, we really don't know what facial expressions you need to, be a team worker or, or solve problems. I don't even know if that has anything to do with facial expressions. Just because it makes sense doesn't make it there is a real connection, right? So I think, we often see this, and I thought that too at the beginning when I first saw hobbies. Some other lawyer told me playing lacrosse in high school was what a resume tool had found out was inferring success in the job. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe it found something no one else has found, right? That playing lacrosse in high school made them they found this magic sauce. And the lawyer was like, what are you talking about? It does a statistical analysis. It's a statistical fluke. There were a bunch of people who played lacrosse in high school and they were interviewed and maybe got the job. Maybe they were all on the same lacrosse team. The tool doesn't know. And I was like, well, maybe it's about teamwork. And it's yeah, then there should be all other teamwork hobbies be part of this. It doesn't make any sense. So I think what maybe to understand the correlation versus causation is well, if I hire you because you're Thomas, are you qualified for the job? No, you're not. So this is not a causal connection. Causal connections, one thing does the other. So I can write beautiful letters. So maybe I'm a good writer. That might be a causal connection. So test me on that. But not on my first name or where I'm from or any of those things. And in fact, most people know that are probably veers into the territory of discrimination, which they want to hopefully stay away from. But I think the problem is if you don't look exactly at here are the capabilities and skills that I need for hiring, but we look at everything a person produces and every, be it the words on their LinkedIn profile, or their facial expressions, we get into really hot territory into this, all these correlations, and they're not always causally connected.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more quick question. So I'll just following on what you just said. For years, I ran campus recruiting on Wall Street, and I used to literally say to investment bankers, sales and traders, sports is not a core competency because there is a bias towards, as you said, lacrosse player, this and that. It was what are those skills, right? So I just thought it was so interesting because it was something that, before all this even existed, I was like, guys, if it's teamwork, yes, right? But let's get to the skills points. But you said something earlier that we were talking about in terms of facial expressions. And I think one thing, especially with high volume hiring, we're hiring so many people in a short amount of time. And there's always a concern around, hey, is someone lying? Or they said they had this experience and whatnot. Have you seen or do you think, based on your research, that software can look at someone's face or listen to their voice and determine if they're lying? Right. And we know
I think we wish we could, right? But there's a reason why
I don't know, it just will sort of leave it.
I know. But I wish we could, right? And we would probably all put lie detectors in our spouses and do periodic test. Are they lying? But no, we cannot. And I think we also have to do more in-depth analysis, but we really haven't seen that is doable. And I think some vendors have sort of hinted that they may be able to, but then when I looked really closely, I was like, this is based on pseudoscience. So it can't, we don't know facial expressions of lying. And in fact, sometimes I think about wait, humans haven't figured out how to understand lying. Why would a computer do that? Why would a computer could do that based on what? So I think that's sort of criteria I'm looking at.
Well, that's awesome. I'll just kind of wrap up with the correlation causation. I think that the best explanation of that to me ever, that no matter how high the correlation is, that does not mean that there's causation. There's this awesome chart, Google it, where it shows that there's an extremely high correlation between the release of Kevin Bacon movies and swimming pool deaths. Now, unless Kevin Bacon is promoting his movies by drowning people in backyard pools, which I don't think he is,
That's not
then
a thing. I feel
that's
like
a
you
classic
play it.
example of like correlation without any causation. So for the vendors out
That's
there, and
because they're
also,
happening at the same time
And
and
yeah,
they
everything
come together. They
goes
look
And-
similar. Yeah.
So
You
Kevin
wouldn't have Kevin Bacon movies. Would we have children drowning? Yes, unfortunately we would.
yes.
So
So for the vendors, for the buyers out there, please don't take the word of the vendor. Just because they say it's true, you've got a real legal obligation. It's not only the right moral thing to do, but it's legally. You got to do it, and just verify that in fact it's true. Because there's a lot of there are snake oil salesmen in this industry. There is no doubt. Well, Hilke, thank you so much. People who want to reach out to you, LinkedIn.
yes,
LinkedIn
find me on
URL is right.
LinkedIn. It's probably, or find me on my NYU faculty page. That's my email. But LinkedIn is also super easy. I'm always there because I think a lot of this research resonates with folks on LinkedIn. So I'm pretty connected there and pretty accessible.
Keep up the great work. This is a great contribution to the industry and to society.
Yes, I'm so grateful this industry is like so open to talking about this and learning, and I'm also open to learning and speaking to folks and learning more about the industry.
Cool.
Excellent.
Jeanette, till next time.
We appreciate it. This was
Thanks,
amazing.
Hilke.
Thank you.